Hello, everyone. Well, thank you so much for staying with us. And now we got another speaker. Well, if you don't know Paulo Dantas is the director of pedagogy for Everybody Loves Languages, an EdTech company that brings language learning to thousands of students. He's also a partner at Troika, and he has been involved in language teaching for over 20 years. And then, well, he has worn many different hats as a teacher educator, course designer, materials writer, and coursebook editor. In the last few years, Paulo has explored ways in which technology and innovation impact teaching and learning, and he has developed apps, platforms, and other digital products for language learning and teacher education. Thank you so much, Paulo. It's great having you here with us.
Thanks, Tammy, for this such warm introduction. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking up some of your well-earned resting time on Sunday to, join us in supporting this amazing cause. I'm quite sure that people in Rio Grande do Sul definitely need the help. If you've been following the news, as Edu said, it is very likely that they are going to need continuing help. So please do make sure that you contribute. I love how amazing the target that you've set, Edu and Tammy, is, because that's quite a nice lump sum of money that I'm sure that they can definitely use, right? So this morning I want to talk to you about three things, and that's essentially based on things that I've been observing around the market and things that I've been talking to people about, talking to schools and teachers and also students about. So the first one, it has to do with how tech is driving changes in patterns of communication, not exactly just from a linguistic perspective, but from a broader sense of communication, um, and how that, of course, reshapes learning, and how learning is being reshaped by technology because the business is, continuing. And I think it's time we started talking about Generation Alpha. I hate those labels, but well, they do make sense up to a certain extent. I've recently found that I'm not a millennial. I'm older than that, apparently. I was, brought up to believe that I was a millennial, but not the case. But the thing is that Generation Alpha has started to, if you teach K-12, like if you teach regular kids at school, it's likely that, I mean, you are teaching them right now. But if you're teaching a teenager and young adults at language centers or as a private students, they are your students of the next couple of years, right? So that's quite important. Um, and the first thing I want to share with you is a bit of history. As a matter of fact, I'm a bit of a history buff, and I came across this by pure chance because I was doing a bit of research on the American Revolution. Don't ask me why. And it was this quite interesting infographic here, which essentially tells us how long a piece of news would take to go from the US to the UK, right? Starting from the Declaration of Independence. So the US was there, they had their struggle to get their independence in 1776. And it took London a month to find out that the US had become independent. That's a bit crazy, isn't it? Something happens and nobody knows, nobody has a clue that that has happened for like 5, 6 weeks, which is quite crazy to think about. And if you see, that was 1776, right? So it took them almost 100 years to be able to reduce that 1 month to 10 hours. So the people did have quite some time to get used to things. It's like, okay, now news travel faster, right? And essentially, if it's a catastrophe or if it's something major, maybe it's going to take about 10 hours because people have access to, that new piece of news, that new element that it's there. Uh, and that was a telegraph. Now, it took them almost another 100 years, roughly 78 years, to reduce that to still zero point 0.2 seconds, that's almost instant. And that's the telephone, right? The telephone, as most of us, if you're a bit older, school, know, like a landline, etc. But it was essentially unaffordable. There was a thing of telephones being incredibly expensive. especially at the turn of last century, because that was, one of the greatest assets you would have in your household, or if you were a business. So that wasn't really accessible to most people. Um, and now, if you as much as sneeze in a funny way, it's very likely that you might become the next meme that everyone will find out, and everyone will be laughing about, right? So that's instant. Now, if you stop to think about it, for most of our existence, we've relied on finding things out and talking to people in a, let's say, slower, more human-paced way, right? We were brought up to actually have actual conversations. There was no WhatsApp twice the speed to play audios. I mean, you actually had to talk to people. You actually had to read letters. You had to read emails. You had to read stuff. You had to, take your time to communicate to people. You wouldn't talk to 25 people on 25 different chats at the same time, instantly, with everyone expecting you to react immediately to whatever they say. I don't think we are very much cut out for that the way we are, because we haven't had the time to react. As you can see, this phenomenon of everyone having access to instant communication 24/7 is fairly recent. Um, I'm not that old. I'm in my late 30s, but I do remember when having a landline was a big thing, right? You would perhaps have one telephone at home. If you came from a wealthier family, you might have had two landlines at home. But for the vast majority of people, that would mean probably zero landlines. You had to actually use a pay phone, or you would use your neighbor's phone or something like that. So the patterns of interaction have become much faster. And from a biological standpoint, I'm quite sure we haven't had the time to actually process that speed in communication. What does that mean? Well, that means we are still learning to communicate. We don't really know for sure uh, how we can actually keep up with the pace of this increasingly fast, increasingly challenging amount of information. And when I'm talking about information, I'm not just talking about news. I'm talking about having time enough to process and react to things which are thrown at us, right? Um, and this has changed just within a generation, right? This chart here shows the prevalence of people going from having a landline phone to having only a mobile phone. Those are the people, the dark blue line shows people who do not have a landline anymore. They rely solely on a mobile phone. I do have a landline at home. I don't have a telephone attached to it, and I don't know its phone number. It's just because it's cheaper to have my internet package. That's it. So people don't really use that anymore. And as you can see, we're not talking about like a huge time span there. We're talking about roughly 20 years. Uh, that's not long enough for us to reorganize everything that we've learned in terms of how we interact and how we communicate with people so that we can move forward, right? There's quite a lot of research that shows that the amount of polarity that we currently have from a political perspective, from an opinion perspective, it has a lot to do with the fact that people were not brought up to process news and information this quickly, right? The vast majority of people alive today, and that's essentially taking out Generation Alpha, they they were brought up with things which were at a more human pace. And what does have to do with language learning? Well, you might be familiar. You might have seen something like this when you first started learning a language or when you first started teaching. We had a variety of schools that would have those language books, right? In which you would go, you would listen to first a long play record, and then a cassette tape, and then a CD, and then an MP3, until those things didn't make sense anymore because everyone could listen to whatever on their phones. Um, this picture's from the late 60s, and it shows a language learning lab at an American university, which I don't remember quite which one it is right now. But that picture could have been taken pretty much anywhere. That picture could have been taken at the school I first started teaching, in which you would find exactly those things, right? And different iterations of things like that have happened all around. You might have actually seen this. I don't know if you've ever seen these booklets. There are lots of variations of those booklets. You have those, you would have Speak Up magazine and things like that, which essentially they were like language courses that you would take. And in this particular case, that language center doesn't exist anymore. It was, I think, called coursebook in Rio. And you would actually do the lessons. You would detach them from the booklet, and you would post that. You would go to the post office, the actual post office, the bricks and mortar thing, and you would post that so that the course would review and then give you feedback. Now, this mechanism of like filling things up and posting it and then getting feedback from the receiving side, as we can see, is not exactly a new phenomenon. But then we have a new iteration of this, right? We have Duolingo and whatever. There are dozens of different platforms that will do exactly what Duolingo does as well. I personally am very prone to Duolingo because I have fun with it. I'm addicted to keeping my streak, which is currently at 59 days and counting, and I've just been promoted to the Amethyst League. So what does that mean? It means that they've gamified the experience. The experience is definitely fun, and it's faster, but it's in its essence, it has remained virtually the same as this experience, right? Now, there's a bit of a hiccup here, because I think if you stop to think of it, you'll see that people are communicating faster. They are being brought up to around this expectation of having to deal with information, with requests, with chats all the time. But we haven't really changed the way we teach and the way people communicate. And there are lots of layers there that go from what I think Gabi was talking about this earlier today. So the whole critical thinking process of assessing what is relevant, what's not relevant, and actually reacting to things. This is not really making into our Duolingo experience. And mind you, I'm not actually saying that this is not relevant, that Duolingo and teaching a grammar-based or translation-based lesson is not relevant. It is, and people have learned languages with that and by doing that for hundreds of years. And we can't say, well, now if you don't add this or that, nobody's going to learn anything. That's not the point. But we can make learning a bit more interesting in the sense that it catches up with our communication needs, right? I think bottom line, what we're talking about here is that we see new technologies all the time. Like every week, apparently there is a new thing that's going to revolutionize education and turn it into something that nobody has ever seen before. And if you've been in this industry for as long as I have, you will have seen at least, I don't know, 50 of those things starting. The first thing I can actually remember is when the interactive whiteboards would change education forever, yada, yada. And then there was Pokemon Go, and then there was Kahoot, and then there was this, and then there was that. But you see, the issue is that without good teaching, these tools have little or no impact in our learners' outcomes. They become really cool in marketing flyers. Definitely they do. I mean, they look pretty. Now, I had the opportunity to go to BAT, the learning roadshow that happened here in São Paulo, perhaps 2-3 weeks ago. It was quite interesting if you visited any education vendor, any booth, there would be blah, 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 powered by AI, which is the new buzzword. And we'll talk about that in a second. Now, when we talk about good teaching, what is good teaching? Because good teaching can be a rather vague concept to most people, because good is a very flexible word. Good for whom? In what context? Under what circumstances? So when we think about good teaching, we need to consider what are the key underlying principles of like universally good teaching. And that has very little to do Well, I think as teachers, we tend to be a bit narcissistic and we think a lot about our own way of teaching rather than our students' way of learning. But the fact is that good teaching has very little to do with the teacher, him or herself. It has a lot to do with how students actually learn and react to what you're doing, right? And one of my favorite people to deal with that, and however cliche that might be, and I'm quite sure that if you haven't heard that today, you will hear that before the end of the day, someone will talk about Bloom's taxonomy. And I'm one of those people because I think that's one of the core principles that underlie and support good teaching, right? So starting in the late 50s, Benjamin Bloom introduces an amazing paper, which is easily and very widely available online. His taxonomy for higher order and lower order thinking skills. And he says that, well, our main goal as educators is not just to insert knowledge and comprehension into people learning. That makes very little sense because then they just become repositories of information, and that's not where we are headed. And that made so much sense that it kind of like stuck with most people, and it has been revisited, it has been revamped. A lot of solid teaching and learning resources nowadays rely very heavily on Bloom's taxonomy. Nobody asked me to do this, but I kind of, if you look at National Geographic learning books, for example, you'll see that they are kind of like written around these elements of the Bloom taxonomy, right? Ranging from lower order thinking skills all the way to higher order thinking skills, meaning less cognitively engaging, more cognitively engaging. Now, Benjamin Bloom's students, they kind of revised his own taxonomy in the early 2000s, which is scary to think that that was a quarter of a century ago, almost. And it's about, we think that in our day and age, the top of the pyramid should have to do with what people have to do every day if you are working within the knowledge slash entertainment slash education slash whatever interesting industry that you might be working at, right? Which is creating stuff. And I know that the word create is a very simple word, but if you stop to think about it quite carefully, it means that it is bringing forward, actually, something that didn't exist before, which is quite powerful. I mean, if you're, I don't know, a Bible scholar, it would, the first line in the Bible, it says, "Oh, and God created something that didn't exist." So it's a massive thing to bring forward something that didn't exist before. And of course, there will be lots of other steps that have to be there before you are able to create something new, right? So uh, going back to the original question, what is good teaching? Well, good teaching is having a systematic framework that will allow us to encourage our students to create new stuff, be that new projects, be that new sentences, be that mastering the present perfect in a way that they weren't able, in a way that allows them to communicate something that they wouldn't be able to communicate before, right? I personally really like the way Krathwohl, Benjamin Bloom's student, revised the taxonomy to make sure that all of the elements within the pyramid, they are verbs, which can really help you in terms of like planning a lesson and making sure that those verbs are there. So my students will remember verbs in the past simple, which is different from my students will create a story talking about a past event. Can you see the massive difference in terms of students' output here? My students will create a story using things that they remember. So it's actually taking learning to a new level. And this is no rocket science here. This has been around forever, right? Interesting people have been talking about this for quite some time. Now, I'm just going to give you a 25-second commercial break that if you haven't used the Pix to make a donation yet, please do so right now before I move on to the next topic. I think I've got about 10 minutes or so. So with this whole AI thing, and I'm a bit of a technology buff, without being a terribly tech savvy person. I'm one of those people who might actually struggle with the remote control, and I do sometimes. But I really like to understand the impact of technology and how it affects our lives, our everyday lives, especially we're not, because I don't want to be caught off guard and, be embarrassed in front of my students and other teachers. And I've been doing quite a lot of research around the impact of AI. And one of my favorite people talking about AI right now is not an AI person. It's actually Saul Khan, the founder of Khan Academy. He's just published a book, amazing book. It was out, I think, maybe 5 days ago, something along the lines of how AI will revolutionize education and how that's a good thing, right? So I want to go back to one of the things that I said before. Oh, we see new tools, new gadgets, new this and new that promise to revolutionize education, but I've never seen anything like that. And I would like to retract myself because, as a matter of fact, I tend to agree with what Saul Khan said in a very good short TED talk in April last year, I think. And at a certain point, he says that we are at the cusp of using AI for probably the biggest positive transformation that education has ever seen. I've seen people comparing AI to lots of things, from the printing press to the advent of the internet. I don't think we can tell exactly what the impact will be. But what I can tell you is AI is not ChatGPT. AI is not Google Gemini. AI is not just a thing that will create a lesson plan for yourself. AI is much bigger than that. AI, we're talking about how information is bundled up in a way that it reacts to contexts, in a way that it reacts to what you need, and in a way that it actually reacts to what your students might need in a fashion that is very personalized. So yes, most of the time we see new technologies, but little evolution in teaching. But if we are able to catch up fast enough, we might actually be able to see quite a lot of evolution in teaching if we rely on these new frameworks, right? Because that might actually help us process the amount of information that is being thrown at us. So remember, we are dealing with a ton more information than we were before, without being able to process it. Now we can actually process it in a way that is effective, given our time frames and given what most people actually can process. Just want to share with you a little bit a bit of reading that I did last week on how what is the role of the teacher, right? What is it that we teachers should be worried about right now in the US, and how do people and how do teachers spend their time? This is a report published by the US Department of Education, which is something along the lines of AI and education. If you Google it up, it will come up. It's one of the first things that comes up from the US Department of Education. It's not too old. It was published last year. Essentially, teachers are not just teaching, right? So teachers are doing teaching, they are preparing for and reflecting on teaching, and they are designing, selecting, and evaluating tools for teaching and learning. It's not just the the teaching. So whatever new technology, whatever new tool, whatever new framework that will make to become a productive, good teaching fostering initiative, it has to do with putting educators at the center of the learning process, so that themselves can put students in center of the learning process, right? Now the problem is, as teachers are doing way more than just teaching. And as a matter of fact, a good amount of teachers' time has to do with doing things that are almost unrelated to teaching. And this is one of the reasons, and please don't hate me for saying this, this is one of the reasons why I kind of like resent the word teacherpreneurship, because I think it is important that we make a living. By all means, I love traveling. I need to pay for the flights. I need to pay for the hotel. I need to, pay the thousands of bullets that pop up whenever I open a drawer. I'm not saying that this is not important. I like money, mind you. But I'm saying that I'm a teacher. Like whatever, if I sign a contract, you know, when you have like those things that my name is Fulano Jutau and I live at such and such, and my profession is teacher. It doesn't matter the hat that I'm wearing, but essentially I'm a teacher. If I introduce myself, say, well, I'm a teacher. But the fact is, as things are right now, we are spending 50% of our time, and that's again from the same report, doing things which they have to do with administration, coaching, uh, student engagement. Oh, that's all important. But if we take some of these elements and we automate some of them, such as administration, evaluation, and feedback, if we cut down on preparation, I'm not saying that preparation is not important. Preparation is vital to what we do, because we need to be prepared, obviously. But I'm saying that perhaps we might not be doing it the best way. So if we can find within the current suite of different AI tools and other tools that will help us focus a bit more on student instruction and engagement, or just interacting with students, or just actually helping students learn and react to everything that is happening right now, perhaps we might have a positive impact on those students' lives. I think that's what people mean by good teaching. Good teaching, it means teaching in a way that students learn and in a way that is effective, right? So it's quite obvious, but still needs to be said. Now, when we survey teachers and they say, well, 51% of my time is made up of doing things that have very little to do with my students, that's kind of like sad. So I think AI will probably change the way we do most things in our lives over the next couple of years. And things are happening, I think, at a faster pace than most of us expected perhaps 2 years ago, because when ChatGPT came up, we were talking about the novelty of it, right? But things are happening at a very massive pace. And AI can do lots of things that we cannot. AI can actually read a 50-page report in 2 minutes and turn it into 10 bullet points. And I know it can because I've been using it to do that. Like, please read this document and turn it into 10 bullet points. I've been doing that consistently. AI can write full manuscripts. AI can write lesson plans, which are probably better than most lesson plans that you could write yourself. But you still need to be able to assess whether that's good for students or not. And there are a few things AI cannot do, and those things they have to do with human traits, right? So I think we are, as humans, we are very well suited to understand outcomes, right? And we can do that because we have the capacity for moral reflection and empathy. We can actually read to something and say, right, wrong, based on a set of values that as a society we've all agreed to. We are not essentially killing each other and hunting for mammals because we signed a very sophisticated social contract a few thousand years ago. And we've been reinventing this contract probably every generation. Sometimes it works, sometimes it needs a bit more editing, as we can see the world's been not exactly the mess that, the nicest place ever. But what this teacher says, that's Sarah Hampton, one of the panelists in artificial intelligence that was highlighted in that US Department of Education report. What she says is she wants AI to help her really quickly and easily see what her students need in their learning journey, right? If you access the QR code, you will be able to download the report, which is free of charge, of course. And I'd like to wrap up with this bit of old news, really. As you can see, that was published in 2011, right? That's 100 years ago, apparently. And this was the first time that an AI engine, and that was Watson, that was created by IBM, it won Jeopardy, the trivia game in the US. Their take on Show the Million. Ours is much better because they don't have Silvio Santos doing it. And it's really interesting that you will get a, an AI model to actually beat humans, at a knowledge contest. But I'm wondering what Watson did once he won, because I would have probably have, a glass or two of wine and made up plans for a trip that I would be able to take on with the prize, or I would probably just fix something. I don't know. I could have done 1,000 things that would make me happy. I'm not quite sure what Watson did. Um, yeah, let's leave it at that. So I'd like to thank you very much for, being with us this morning. Please make sure that you open your wallets. There was something that Lola from Winner Joma said over the past few days, and I've been thinking about this very much. We all come from different backgrounds. We all have different purchasing powers. We make different livings. That's a, you know. Um, and she set up a value that I thought, an amount that I thought it was quite interesting as a value, which is giving at least uh, one of your lessons, which is a lot, but it's just one of your lessons. How many lessons do you teach a month, right? So I think that's an interesting thought. So I'd like to publicly thank Lola for it. It's just been making me think about this every single day, which has made me increase the amount of money I've donated so far. So thank you very much. I hope you have a fantastic Sunday of learning. Yeah.
Oh, Edu, I think you are muted. Can you? Yeah?
Okay, now it is. Now I'm not muted anymore. Paulo, thank you very much for the powerful insights you brought. Uh, Tammy and I were talking, chatting during your presentation, and we were like mind blown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, Paolo. Thank you so much. That was great. I guess that everyone really enjoyed it. They're including comments. So thank you. Thank you once again.
Before we leave you guys for a minute to set up our next speaker, I would like to announce a new initiative from Brass ESOL. I just saw this on their social media, and I it's absolutely worth sharing. If you are planning on going to Goiânia to the next international conference happening in July, all the money donated from registrations from the 20, all the money raised from the registrations made from May 20th to May 26th will be donated to Rio Grande do Sul as well. So if you're still in doubt whether you were going to Goiânia or not, this is your chance to attend an incredible international conference and contribute to the cause as well. So, as Paulo said, donating one of your classes sounds reasonable, although it's a lot, but sounds very reasonable. Thank you, Paulo and Lola, for this insight. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much again. And Tammy, do you want to share how much we have raised so far?
Yes. Well, we know that your generosity has already made a tremendous impact, and we are deeply grateful for all your ongoing support. And so far, we have already made 14,200. Yes, right, Edu?
Yes, yes.
Yes, I believe that, well, by me too, we can make it. So thank you so much. And every contribution, no matter the size, bring us one step closer to making, the difference and reaching our goal. So please keep donating and spread the word.
Thank you, Tammy. Paulo, huge kiss. Thank you very much for devoting your time to our
Thank
cause
you.
today. And I'll see you guys in a bit.